NetZero. What do you think when you hear those words? For me, it's quite nostalgic because NetZero was the first, for me at least, to boast a free internet service in the late 90s. Why was this a big deal? Well, in the late 90s, my family was still using AOL, and it cost us money per minute to get on there, or per hour, one or the other. This made going on the internet tough. I had to really convince my parents why I needed to check my email if I wanted to go online. NetZero was my escape from that. I saw their commercials and was extremely intrigued at the fact they were boasting a free internet service, and so were all my friends. So the quest began to sign up for NetZero and get this free internet, because this way I could tell my parents it didn't cost anything. I can go online when I want, with the exception of tying up the phone line, because we're talking about a 28.8 kilobyte modem at the time. So the phone line would get tied up, anytime. You'd have to make that dial-up connection. Now, this is great and all. Before we dive into my memories of NetZero, a really quick rundown of what they were compared to what they are, because they do still exist today. NetZero came out around 1998. They acquired FreeEye.net, which was another free internet service provider, which I unfortunately can't find really anything on in terms of their logos or websites, which is a little unfortunate. But in 98, NetZero started to boast free internet. How were they accomplishing this? Well, they were using advertising to pay for their service. What does that mean? Well, they had this Zero port, which was a little box that would target ads at the user based on the profile setup that they created. They also used extensive tracking to make this happen. Now, what does that all mean? Well, let's just take a look at the Zero port and their targeting mechanism back in the early 90s. This is the Zero port. This is a little box that appears on the user's screen when they successfully log in to NetZero. As you can see, it's a little box that targets ads at the user. So it's their little port, so to say, to get you that advertising blip constantly on your monitor while you use the NetZero internet connection. With the NetZero port, subscribers can connect to the internet, navigate the web, and zero in on content and information that is relevant to them. And this is all provided for free. The Zero port's proprietary software interface allows users to view customized information according to their interests while connected to the internet. The Zero port provides the ultimate stickiness on the web when it sits on the user's desktop, separate from the browser, and can be moved to any point on the desktop, but cannot be closed. Ads can be viewed at all times regardless of where a user travels on the web, providing advertisers with unparalleled visibility and true one-to-one marketing. With NetZero, advertisers buy a user and not just a website. Our revolutionary technology makes us a quality aggregator and sender of internet users to specific websites with the unique ability to identify and track usage patterns of every NetZero subscriber. So it's basically what it sounds. It's a little thing on your desktop that shoots ads at you based on your profile and apparently where you visit. I remember this very well being on my desktop when I would log into NetZero. Now, there was also a bit more with the tracking. Let's take a look at that. NetZero's targeting capabilities are possible due to our proprietary Zcast software. This software contains patent-pending profiling technology, which allows advertisers to target their messages to NetZero subscribers by demographic, geographic, and psychographic data. To register with NetZero, subscribers complete a profile overview that asks for basic demographic and household information, along with interests and activities. This information, along with the ability to track online behavior, ensures that ad content is tailored to the individual user. Targeting can also focus on specific websites. Advertisers can choose to fire ad missiles or affinity missiles at selected sites so that their message or product message will be shown the moment a user visits the targeted site. So when my kid self started seeing NetZero commercials boast free internet, they of course weren't boasting anything about the online tracking and advertising. But back then, that wasn't something I cared about or worried about like we do today. These commercials also, which were done with the spokesperson of Dennis Miller. Now, funny thing about that, I can only find commercials from 2003 onward, but I do have a good feeling, at least from my recollection, that he was a spokesperson back when it was boasting the free internet that they were providing. More on how they changed in a bit here. But these commercials really intrigued me to want to explore this software and kind of were my loophole into getting online when I wanted. At least that's how I thought in my brain. Now, you would log in after you filled out this profile and dial up just like any other service provider. But there was one kicker with this. It hardly worked. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, I barely ever got in. I would dial up to get busy signals, lost connections, timeouts, you name it. And this wasn't just with me. We would do this at my house. We'd go to our friend's house and try it on their computer and the same stuff. Did we get in? Sometimes. But when we would, the speeds were so abysmally slow that it wasn't even usable most of the time. And I think I only got in maybe a few times. I could count on one hand how many times I probably successfully logged in with NetZero. So the service, while being a free advertising paid service, didn't work well from my experience. If you had a different experience, please let me know. I would love to hear about anyone that used this as their proprietary service in the late 90s and actually had a good experience with it. I certainly did not. So for a free internet service provider to really not work, pretty much squashed any chance I had of getting free internet like I thought I would with NetZero. So where is NetZero at today? Well, this didn't last long, this free internet service. In fact, in a matter of only a few years, they had switched to a paid service, a monthly paid service of $9.95 a month, which back then was still a really well-priced service compared to its competitors. I never used it, so I can't say if it was good at that price, but I'm assuming getting rid of all this advertising and so forth probably brought a better experience to its clients. But again, I cannot speak for that. I never used it. So why did this happen? Well, it turns out that the internet, the free internet, just wasn't a good idea, and it just didn't work out like they hoped. Here's an article kind of explaining what that means. NetZero, funded in part by Idealab's venture capital arm, intends to build a large service with several 100,000 users in the first year by drawing them to a free network. Subscribers will get access in exchange for filling out detailed profile that advertisers can use to send them highly targeted ads. That, of course, being the Zcast software and that Zport we had mentioned. A 1-inch by 3.5-inch window for ads will pop up every time a user logs on. The subscriber will be able to move the window around, but he or she will not be able to remove it. PAC explained. That way, the advertiser has uninterrupted access to the consumer. Right off the bat, that sounds awful. Now, they thought so too. Reading on, the business model sounds good on the surface, but analysts are skeptical about the company's ability to make money, especially in light of the many failed attempts ISPs have made to offer ad-supported net access. NetZero was well aware of the issues that could occur with this free type of service, and that's why in 2001 they had already started the platinum service of the $9.95 a month for 40 hours of access. So there was already things in the works in terms of their company structure to move away from this. And Of course, this didn't last long. By 2003, at least that's what I can tell from advertising and so forth, that's what they were basically advertising, was the $9.95 a month access. So it didn't last long. From their creation in 1998 till just 4 or so years later, not even three or so years later, they were already starting to go the way of a monthly service fee instead of this free ad targeted internet service. And they're still around today. I don't know anyone or any company that uses them, but they do offer a variety of services still and are still an internet service provider to this very day. So yeah, to this day, the word NetZero still has a very nostalgic feel to me because of my experience with it in the late 90s. I remember spending so much time trying to get it to work and being so bummed out every time it failed because, again, they were my escape from my parents telling me I couldn't go online because of the charges and cost. So it was this amazing thing that really wasn't as amazing as they made it sound on their commercials, unfortunately. But to this day, it still remains nostalgic. Even going back on the old net and looking at their old website brought back some pretty good memories of downloading that software and the excitement of trying to get NetZero to work on my Packard Bell Windows 95 machine to get me that free internet I was promised on their commercials. Of course, as we've seen, it just didn't work out that way, but I'll always remember it. I think the other big nostalgic piece was the commercials with Dennis Miller. They were all over the place. You couldn't escape those commercials being played all the time and really having a big presence in the media in the early 2000s. Again, we still never went with them, but they were always there trying to get us on that service. Their tagline being that they were half the price of AOL, which was really intriguing. But I think, at least for my family, we stuck to the stuff we knew that worked, like AOL and then, MSN and so forth. So that's my experience with NetZero. Let me know if you had any experience in the early 90s with this free ad targeted internet service. I'd be happy to hear any stories you have on the matter. And thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.